Welcome to Discussion with the Writer Fred, right here at Black Video News in San Antonio, Texas, and we are the voice for the Black community. Well, viewers, you know we have an election. You have to know it because you're just inundated on your television with all these negative ads that everybody's throwing at each other. We have an election coming up. The actual date of the election will be November 8th, but early voting starts on October 24th and goes through November the 4th. And so I'm pleased to have here in our studios three people who have created a very, very important and powerful organization called The Power of One. Mr. Nias Harris, Mr. Gordon Benjamin, and Professor Margaret Richardson. To the three of you, welcome to Discussion with the Writer Fred. And
Thank
so
you.
Before we get started though, Mr. Harris, can you explain the kente cloth?
Yes, sir. The kente cloth are stoles that are hand woven in Ghana, West Africa. And they represent the culture. One can get the stoles in different colors, and also there are different symbols. Whatever symbol that person chooses to have on the kente cloth, one can put that on. In America today, one may find in graduation, quite a few classes have class of 2022, class of whatever.
And how can they, if someone wants to get the kente cloth, how can they get it through you?
Well, they can contact me directly for kente cloth.
Okay.
And if they have some special design or special colors that they want, we can order that also directly from Ghana, West Africa.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how do they contact you?
Well, my email address is NIAS Harris, HARRIS, @hotmail.com.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I know you all have a procedure you go through before you start, right? And I think Mr. Harris usually does that.
Yes.
So take us through that, Mr. Harris.
Yes, sir.
Let's start.
In our presentation, we have some visuals. In these visuals, we have mental sculpture symbolizing male and female who are bound by the mouth, by the hands, and by the feet. After that, we show a sculpture of a thinking man. From that, we go to a sculpture that deals with Sankofa. Sankofa symbolizes returning to the past to fetch that was lost, to be able to move forward. And after which, we have the Santa Claus with the bag on his back. Because we are saying, once you go through our session, one should be able to leave with a bag full of information to be able to share with others.
And that's what we're going to do today. We'll give our viewers a bag full of information that you all have collected for the benefit of our community. And I think that is a fantastic, fantastic thing you all are doing. I know you're dedicated to it. And you just had a session over at the library, didn't you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we feel as though it's our obligation here at Black Video News to give you all this opportunity to reach hopefully a larger audience, because as you know, we all need this. We all need this.
Yes.
Yes. So how do you want to get started, Margaret?
Well, Mr. Benjamin, would you like to start us off with talking about updates about what we expect to see on the November ballot?
The November ballot, there's been some legal maneuvers towards the Bexar County Elections Department because they had decreased the number of polling places available for the November elections. And systematically, this was something that should have been sanctioned by the Commissioner's Court. They went ahead and did it without Commissioner's Court position. The Texas Civil Rights Project filed suit because there was a previous court order that required the Bexar County Elections Department to follow these instructions according to Commissioner's Court, and they didn't, and the court order stood. And again, as I said, the Texas Civil Rights Project filed suit on behalf of Texas Organizing Project, and now additional polling places should become available in the upcoming November 8th elections. There's been some scuttlebutt that there are not enough judges, but again, if you knew that this would come down the pipe, there should have been preparation for the additional election judges and staff to staff these locations. And if not, there should have been a request for additional funds in order to finance the increased need for election judges. And SB 1 implemented prior to the March primaries had instigated some additional steps in order to request a mail-in ballot, because the elections department had a history of mailing out mail-in ballots to those people who had previously signed up. That was eliminated. Now there's a certain deadline for requesting the mail-in ballot and certain instructions seemingly meant to confuse people as to how you need to fill out the request, how you need to fill out the ballot, and how you need to put it in an envelope to send it back to Bexar County Elections.
Okay.
And if all of those are not followed in sequence, that ballot may be rejected.
Didn't Tommy Calvert file for an injunction against the removal of the places to vote? Was he a part of that?
He was a part of that.
Yeah.
He was a part of that. But again, the elections department needed to have gone to commissioner's court to get permission to
remove
reduce the number of polling places available.
Really?
Yes.
That's a state function, isn't it? How would the county get involved in that?
Well, the elections department is who supervises this, but the main thing for me, from my perspective, is having to have permission from commissioner's court to reduce the number of polling places is the key to this particular measure.
So you
Right.
didn't need, the Secretary of State couldn't make those decisions?
No.
Okay.
It was made locally.
Oh, okay.
And even with the previous court order that they were not to, do this without the court's permission,
Okay.
they went ahead and did it against the judge's order. So as I said, the Texas Civil Rights Project filed suit on behalf of the Texas Organized Project, which is a voting registration organization. All right, and they championed voters' rights. And they went back to court, and within this past week, the judge ordered that Bexar County Elections needed to add at least 85 more polling
Wow, that's
places.
great. Did they do it?
They're going to do it.
Before the early election? Or
Right,
for the-
for the general election. I'm not sure if they're going to be ready by October 24th, when early voting begins. That period is October 24th to November the 4th.
Now, with early voting, though, you can go anywhere.
You can go anywhere and vote,
You can vote, yeah.
anywhere in Bexar County.
Okay. Can you do that on November 8th?
Yes.
Can you go
Yeah,
anywhere?
you can go anywhere and vote.
You're not restricted to
Not restricted to the polling places closest to you. You can vote any place.
Okay. And one on the east side, I know we have one over at Claude Black.
Claude Black,
Yeah.
Copernicus, the McCreeless Library, the old Wheatley High School, which is now the Young Men's Leadership Academy. That's still a polling place for the immediate east side. And generally, the elementary and junior high schools have been available from the school districts to act as polling sites. I think over by Mackley Park, Lamar Elementary has been a frequent site for people to vote in that particular area. So there are a lot of different places. Smith Elementary on South Givers, or I think it's Givers in Virginia. That's another polling place within the east side. So Poe Middle School has been one. So I don't know which ones have been previously closed, but there's a lot that has to be added between now and Election Day.
November 8th. Let me ask y'all something. It just bugs me when I hear, and this a lot comes from Republicans, go out and challenge where you can walk up to someone in the line and challenge their right to vote. Have you heard about that?
I haven't.
Yeah, I've heard that the so-called poll watchers are supposed to be able to do that without any fear of retribution from the officials or law enforcement. And I'm not real clear as to how they would do that. But I would think if a person is exercising their right to vote, they shouldn't be interfered with
Absolutely not.
by someone questioning, whether they are eligible to vote or
Maybe
not.
that was in Florida. Maybe that's not in Texas. But I know it just hurt me to think that someone can walk up to you and challenge your right. Now, when you say the poll watchers, those are not are those the people inside who are working the polls?
No, that the polling staff are the people who sit behind the desk, election workers and election judges.
Right.
Poll watchers generally are appointed by a candidate or a campaign, to watch and to see that people don't go beyond the 100 feet, trying to do electioneering, pass it out, printed information about a particular candidate or an issue. That's what I've seen poll watchers do.
Well,
But
that could get kind of touchy, couldn't it?
well, it can, you know,
Yeah.
if you don't want to be bothered, you
You
know.
don't want to be bothered, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
you have a right to tell them, you know, I don't think that's any of your business.
Absolutely.
That's
yeah.
my personal opinion.
Yeah,
You know,
me
but
too.
I don't think you need to be questioning me.
Absolutely, yeah.
And some of us, you know, over 65 are not really, you know, we can be testy at times about whether, you know, I have a right to be in this line to vote. I don't believe that's just anybody's business.
Okay, we're going to take a break here. We got some of the particulars out of the way. When we come back, we'll get right to what's on the ballot. Okay? Yeah. This is Discussion with the Writer Friends here at Black Video News in San Antonio, Texas. We'll be right back with you.
Nothing to do this week? Don't miss another event. Go to blacksinsanantonio.com for our event calendar. The home of the largest business directory in San Antonio with an African American focus. Sign up today for our weekly e-blast and text message alerts. Help us make this a better community. Connect, empower, grow.
Hello, this is Cornell with Frost Bank.
Hi there, this is Terry with Frost.
Good evening, this is Franklin.
This is Robert with Frost.
Hello, this is Rosemary with Frost Bank.
Welcome back to Discussion with the Writer Fred right here at Black Video News in San Antonio, Texas. And let me again remind you that we are the voice of the Black community in this city. And I am so pleased and happy to have three of those voices, really strong voices with me in the studio today. Mr. Nias Harris, Mr. Gordon Benjamin, and Professor Margaret Richardson. And so now I think what we're going to do, if you don't mind, Professor, can you talk about the plural executive? What it is?
Yes, thank you. First off, let me thank you for inviting us today. We really appreciate the opportunity to continue talking about what's on the ballot and getting this information out to everyone. One of the, I think, important things with this particular election is that it is a midterm election, meaning that it's happening 2 years after the presidential election.
Yes.
So you don't have the president on the ballot. You don't have a U.S. senator on the ballot. We have the members of the U.S. House of Representatives on the ballot. But I think one of the things that's most important about this ballot is the plural executive.
Right.
These are the seats that are kind of hidden away from view. We always see them in state government. They run state government, but we tend to forget when they are elected.
Right.
So the plural executive was done by the state of Texas roughly between 1850 to 1876 when they were getting ready for the new state constitution. And what it did is it watered down the office of governor
Deliberately. Yeah.
watered down the office of governor due to some abuse that was happening by a previous governor, E.J.
Right.
Davis.
Yeah.
Who was a Republican governor. I don't know so much if he abused his power, but he was a Reconstructionist Republican. So he supported Reconstructionist policies, and particularly those that were designed to bring African Americans into what we see as citizenship and equal protection. So when Democrats took control of the Texas legislature between 1873 and 1874, one of the things that they did was take away some of the powers from the governor. They created the plural executive, which is, I think, one of only a couple of states that have it, where the governor has to share power with other members of the executive branch, where they are each independently powerful and autonomous unto themselves.
Right. Absolutely. And they cannot be, like the national government, Biden can fire the attorney general, but in the state of Texas, Abbott cannot
No.
fire the attorney general.
No.
Or any of the other office because they are independently
Elected.
And in many ways, they may have their own constituency.
They do.
That looks out after them. Okay, so let's talk about those positions.
Okay. Well, starting out with the office of governor, currently we have Greg Abbott, who is governor, running for his third term. Now, the first thing with governor, well, with all these positions, really, no term of office has an expiration date. So they can run for as long as they want to, as long as they continue to be reelected. There's no limits on that term of service. Abbott is running for his third term. He's already been in the seat for 8 years, but before he was governor, he served 8 years as Texas Attorney General. That's the chief legal officer of the state. And then before then, he served as a member of the Texas Supreme Court. So this is someone who not only understands the intricacies of state government and the state constitution by extension, but this is someone who very quietly has been slowly expanding the powers of the office of governor beyond what the Constitution, the Texas Constitution, actually included for the governor under the 1876 version, which is the version that we're under today.
Right. Okay. Who's running against him?
Running against him is Beto O'Rourke, who used to be a U.S. congressperson representing, I believe, the El Paso area. He ran for the U.S. Senate against Ted Cruz when Ted Cruz was up for re-election his first time, and came within 2 percentage points of beating Ted Cruz because Cruz was so unpopular even among Republicans that Cruz had to ask then President Donald Trump to come into Texas to help him campaign to keep the seat. There is, I believe, a libertarian running against Greg Abbott. So there is opportunity for that, and then there is a write-in candidate, a write-in spot where you can write in a candidate. But those write-in candidates already have to certify their intention to run and fill out paperwork with the Secretary of State. So you can't just write in anybody. It has to be a name that's already built into that list.
Before we continue, I'm just going to deviate just for a minute. We invited Beto O'Rourke to come on our show and talk to our viewers. They didn't even bother to respond.
Oh, wow.
They didn't bother to respond. And it brings up that whole issue. And I think this is becoming a real problem with the Democrats, that black people feel that they take our vote for granted. They need to put an end to that. Because Beto O'Rourke needs every black vote out there to win. And so, but they just assume we're going to vote for him. And it's a real dilemma for us.
Yeah.
I did a piece on in our new newspaper last week on this, that the dilemma is that we don't have much of a choice, unfortunately. We're sure not going to vote for Abbott.
No.
No.
And so we don't like being taken for granted like that.
And if I may interject
Yes,
for a
absolutely.
moment. In 2014, I appeared in federal court in Southern District in Corpus Christi, Texas, as a part of the suit against the Texas voter ID law. And several witnesses from throughout the state of Texas, students, senior citizens, retirees, all testified about the harm that the voter ID law had done to them as voters. My case was I needed to have a copy of my birth certificate from born in Louisiana, which it wasn't available directly, and online it was supposedly going to be $85.24, which was cumbersome for a person just on a fixed income. And eventually I did obtain it, but on the stand, all of us testified as to what steps we had to go through in order to get a copy of your birth certificate, to get either a renewed driver's license or to get a driver's license or identification, election identification card, the EIC. And the judge ruled that that law had a discriminatory impact on women, senior citizens, students, African Americans, and Latinos.
Okay. Yeah.
Went to the Fifth Circuit on appeal, and they deemed that she had to find that it was discriminatory intent.
Yeah.
While that was going on, Mr. Abbott said out loud, oh, they've had 2 years to find someone who was harmed by the Texas voter ID law, and they couldn't find any witnesses, right? The Fifth Circuit enumerated 8 people who had testified in federal court in Corpus Christi, Texas, in that hearing, that these are the people that the defendant's attorney, he was Attorney General at the time, the defendant's attorney has publicly stated that there was no evidence of anyone being harmed, and they enumerated all 8 names, including mine, that
And that was Abbott, wasn't
that he was inaccurate. for want of a better word, excuse me.
Now, there are a couple of other candidates running for governor. We have Mark Tippett running as a Libertarian,
Okay.
and Dalila Barrios running as a member of the Green Party. So for governor, we do have other candidates besides Democrats and Republicans running for that position.
The Libertarian would do harm in terms of of getting votes to Abbott. The Green Party would do harm to Beto O'Rourke, right? Would that be correct?
Usually.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And that's a position where the governor doesn't have to get that clear 50 plus 1%.
Yeah.
Whoever just gets the simple majority actually wins the seat.
Yeah.
And there is no runoff election if no one reaches that 50 plus 1%.
Yeah. So it's just a plurality.
Right.
All they need is 48% if that's the one that wins.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Which
we've had a couple elections that have done that.
which is different, and they're talking about it today. In Georgia, there's a Libertarian running for Senate, and that person may pull enough votes away so that Warnock or the other guy
Well,
won't get 51%. Then there has to be a runoff.
Yeah.
Everybody says, "Oh no, not more of these guys." Yeah.
Another Georgia runoff.
but if I may, Professor, you was saying taken for granted. It appears to me when a candidate is trying to get elected, we in the audience do not know the question to ask the candidate
Okay.
to bring out certain information.
Okay.
Because I have yet to hear someone ask a Democrat, why are you taking advantage of us, thinking that we are going to vote for you? And then we look for the candidate to tell us what they're going to do for us,
Right.
but I don't hear us telling the candidate what we want them to do for us.
Right.
Unless I'm wrong.
And what the candidates do is they feed fuel to the Republicans, who are the ones really making the argument. Well, why you vote for those folks? They just take you for granted. And then when they they turn around and do it, then it adds
Yeah.
more to that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think a good example of taking that vote for granted is that there's been a couple of missteps in the last couple of years that Governor Abbott has done that I think people still remember. The winter storm that we had in February 2021, Winter Storm Uri, the whole blow up about whether or not that electric grid was serviceable enough to where we were 4 minutes before it collapsed. We got that close before the total collapse of it. And then in San Antonio water systems collapsed as well because the water went out in certain places. So there was an issue with whether or not Governor Abbott and his powers of appointment could have appointed the right people, not only to ERCOT, the electric company that actually operates the grid, and then the people that should have been appointed to the Public Utility Commission that have the oversight of the actual grid. Whether or not he stayed up on those appointments, whether or not that was executive patronage, and he's rewarding friendships because people supported him in the election. But at the end of session, we don't know if the weatherization maintenance was maintained, whether any updates to the electric grid were working or have been done. All we do know is that the Texas Tribune reported that Governor Abbott left session, or when the moratorium lifted, that he got almost $1 million in campaign contributions from energy producers in this state.
Oh, okay. We're going to take another break. Before we do, I feel obligated. If anyone from Abbott's campaign or supporter wants to come in and refute what has been said, please contact us here at Black Video News, and we'll invite you in. We're going to take another break here, and then we'll be right back to continue looking at what's on the ballot.
Nothing to do this week? Don't miss another event. Go to blacksinsanantonio.com for our event calendar. The home of the largest business directory in San Antonio with an African American focus. Sign up today for our weekly e-blast and text message alerts. Help us make this a better community. Connect, empower, grow.
Welcome back to the discussion with the writer Fred right here at Black Video News. in San Antonio, Texas. And we are in the middle of a discussion of what's on the ballot. And so I'll turn it back over to Professor Richardson
Thank
to
you.
continue.
Thank you, sir. We're going to kick off now with Lieutenant Governor, the second most powerful elected official in the state of Texas. That position right now is the presiding officer of the state Senate. They have the opportunity not only to select the committee chairs of all of the committees in the Senate, but then the committee members, and that indirectly will influence what bills get heard in committee, what bills are voted out of committee and make it over to the Senate floor for the full body of the Senate to vote on, and then indirectly influences what House bills, when they come over from the House and need to be heard in the Senate, whether or not those bills will be heard in committee and then voted on by the full body before it gets back to the House.
This is really interesting because the lieutenant governor is not an elected senator.
No.
He's elected lieutenant governor, but he has all the power in the Senate.
Yes.
And that's a kind of strange situation, I think, because for the Speaker of the House, he or she is actually elected and then chosen by the members to be the leader in the House, but it's different in the Senate. So
Yes.
Go ahead.
The current lieutenant governor is Dan Patrick. This is his third term. Again, there are no term limits, so if elected, he will be able to serve for as long as he can continue to win re-election. His opponent is Democrat Mike Collier, who basically ran against him, I believe, a couple of years ago. Dan Patrick beat him, I think, by 5 points. So the election was still kind of close, enough where Collier thinks he might be able to beat him this time. And then there is a libertarian, Shanna Steele, who is also a candidate for that election.
Okay.
Next, we have Attorney General. That seat is the chief legal officer of the state. So they literally defend the state. If there is federal legislation that the state doesn't agree with, then it is the Attorney General's obligation and responsibility to challenge that federal legislation if they think that there is a conflict with the state constitution. That current Attorney General is Ken Paxton, who is running for his third term. Again, no term limits, so he can continue to run as long as he wants. He's also currently under indictment.
Yeah.
And it's hard to talk about Mr. Paxton without that particular issue because he's been under indictment for a long time now. His opponent is Rochelle Mercedes Garza, who's running as a Democrat. And then there's a libertarian, Mark Ashe, who's also running.
Okay.
The next seat that we have is Comptroller of Public Accounts. Now that seat is actually kind of sort of two positions. The first one is State Treasurer, where they collect taxes. And then the other part is kind of like that investment part, like the CPA, where they actively invest accounts. They oversee money that we have in the rainy day account, in the permanent school and the permanent university funds. They also oversee funds from the State Highway Fund. Literally billions of dollars that Texas has collected for various use and purposes that we need. The person that's in that seat is Glenn Hagar, who used to be a state senator. He's running for his third term as comptroller. Again, no term limits, so he can continue to run for as long as he wants. His opponent is Janet Dudding as a Democrat, and then Alonso Echeverria Garza, a libertarian.
Okay.
So it's good to see that competition just beyond just Democrats and Republicans.
That's a pretty powerful seat
Yes.
because, as I remember, he has to okay legislation that there's money for it, right?
He does an estimation for how much money we have in general revenue right before they start session. So usually about 6 months out.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
The next seat we have is Commissioner of the General Land Office.
Isn't that a Bush?
Yes, sir. The person currently in the seat is George Prescott Bush, the nephew of former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, and the nephew of former Texas Governor and U.S. President George W. Bush.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Now, he's currently in the seat, but he is only serving out the rest of his term. He decided to run for Attorney General in the Republican primary against Ken Paxton and lost.
Oh, and he lost.
Yes.
Okay.
So Bush is out. He's only serving to the end of this term, so technically this is an
okay.
open seat.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So General Land Office usually handles state lands, protection for those